Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time today to learn more about how earned wage access can help you recruit and retain employees. We're excited to kick off our 2024 webinar series with you and our partner, Rain, today. I'm Bruce Belvin, founder and president of OneDataSource, and I'm joined by Jen Terrell, who is the VP of Employer Partnerships. I'll allow Jen to introduce herself in a moment and her company as well after just a couple of housekeeping items. With respect to everybody's time, we won't be more than 25 minutes for the presentation, and we'll also have some live Q&A at the end. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have in the chat. We want to make sure that you walk away with all the information and value as possible from the time you spend with us today. We'll also be sure to send everyone who joined us the recording later this week. And if you should have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to mine or Jen's email directly, which will be in the information that's shared. Again, really looking forward to talking through the opportunities that present themselves when you're thinking about strengthening your multi-unit operation and how a benefit like earned wage access can really help you do that. So here's what we'll be covering. Today, we'll cover the impact of offering earned wage access for our multi-unit operators, share employer market insights while highlighting a number of ways customers are finding success with this foundational benefit. We also want to clarify how you can appropriately evaluate earned vendors and use this benefit as a competitive differentiator in your hiring process. I'll share details on our role as a data connector in the franchise ecosystem and quickly explore the value of OneDataSource integration. Then finally, we'll close by answering your questions. Again, feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat below. So who we are, OneDataSource has been around for almost 20 years. We actually support close to 14,000 restaurants at this point with all the onboarding we've been doing. It's almost 50 brands, and our customers doing well over 10 billion in revenue that we support through our data integration with ERP systems, payroll providers, and particularly great partners like Rain. It was really the initial needs to solve my own challenges when I was operating a 70-store multi-brand franchise, along with those deep industry knowledge and relationships built over the years that led me to found OneDataSource. We've now been in business, as I mentioned, almost 20 years, supporting quite a few stores across a lot of brands and many point-of-sale back office systems and other critical vendors. There'll be a slide later that'll give you an overview of what those are, so you can check and see if we're already supporting the brands and systems that you have. So now let me hand it off to Jen and let her talk about Rain.
Hi, guys. I'm Jen Terrell, as Bruce mentioned. I'm Rain's VP of Employer Partnerships. Our product is Rain Instant Pay, which is an application that we offer to employers that allows employees to access their wages in advance of their company's scheduled payday. I think anybody who's joining this webinar or who may eventually view this webinar probably is very familiar with earned wage access, especially if you're in the restaurant or hospitality sector. I joke that if you haven't heard of earned wage access at this point, you might have been living under a rock if you're in those two industries, because I feel like every conference that we go to, earned wage access vendors are sponsoring the conference. Every happy hour we attend at those conferences is sponsored by an earned wage access provider. It's really become all the rage over the past 5 or 6 years. And we're really proud because we're solving a really big problem. This was the impetus behind earned wage access programs, is that employees have problems bridging the gap between paydays. There are estimates as much as 72% of employees don't have $500 in savings if a car breaks down. Other estimates are that the average shift working family is incurring $150 to $190 a month in needless banking fees associated with just trying to get to payday. And so that, combined with the competition with jobs that do pay instantly, like gig economy jobs like Uber and DoorDash, has really led companies in the restaurant and hospitality space to see this now as a need to have benefit as opposed to a nice to have benefit. And that's where Rain comes in. A shift that we've seen over the course of the past couple of years. When earned wage access first hit the marketplace, it was really popular in retail. For instance, Walmart has a program, Target has a program, Kroger and every major grocer has a program where employees can access a portion of their wages very shortly after they've clocked out of their shift. When it really hit the marketplace 4 or 5 years ago, employers had a lot of questions more around, do employees really need this? Is this something that employees are going to actually utilize? Is it worth the lift to get a program like this up and running? Or is this really just a nice to have benefit? Really, the shift that we're seeing now in the marketplace over the past year and a half or 2 years is that it's becoming an expectation in 5 or 6 key industries, the restaurant space being one of those industries. It's becoming an expectation that employers have this as part of their benefit suite. So more and more, we're talking to employers not about the value of the program and why they might need it, but they're calling us from a defensive posture and saying, hey, we have employees that have friends who have access to this benefit through their employer, and it's causing us pain and consternation because employees are saying to us, why don't we have access to this benefit? We are seeing definitely a shift in the marketplace. So now we're seeing that employers that haven't adopted a program, it's usually not because they don't see the value in it, but because they're unsure about the lift and the administrative ongoing load that would be put upon their teams to deploy a program like this. And quite honestly, they're overwhelmed at all of the options that are available for earned wage access programs and how to evaluate an earned wage access program. So I want to really focus more of our discussion today, less about the value of earned wage access and why you should do it, and more about how do you navigate the landscape of selecting the right earned wage access provider? What should you be looking for? What should you expect in terms of lift in implementation and ongoing administrative burden from your side? And ultimately, how to land on a decision that's best for your organization as you go forward. But first, you can see on the screen here just a couple of reasons to believe that these programs are really powerful for employers. As I mentioned a couple of years ago, a lot of the information that was out there about these programs was hypothetical and anecdotal, that we were hearing from employers about what it was doing for their employees and for their business. Now there is actually empirical data that proves that these programs are driving real productivity and real gains in things like retention and applications for shift workers. So here are just a couple of stats. Improved hiring competitiveness. A lot of employers report major increases in applications for shift workers when they hype that they have this as part of their benefit suite. I always tell the story of one of our large Taco Bell franchisees who says that this is one of the best recruiting tools they have is their earned wage access program, because they actually put window clings in the windows of the drive-through saying, cash out as soon as you clock out, you can apply within. And they tell us that they get walk-ins daily saying, how does that work? If I worked one shift, can I get some of my money quickly? So there's real reason to believe that if you hype this as part of your benefit suite, you'll see increases. Increased productivity. Rain users who utilize the benefit versus those who don't utilize the benefit, we can see from their timekeeping data that they're working on average 17 hours per month more than their colleagues who are not utilizing an earned wage access app. I liken it to when I was the bartender I worked at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and I remember thinking, I don't want to work my shift tomorrow. I'm going to give my shift away and maybe go to the Titans game or do something fun on a Sunday afternoon. Then I would walk out that night with $200 or $300 in cash in my hand. And I would think to myself, there is no way I'm giving up my shift tomorrow. So cash on hand really does spur increases in productivity. It's counterintuitive. We have employers that say to us, I worry about giving access to funds in advance because then maybe employees won't show up for the shift because they already have their money. And it's actually the opposite. We actually see increases in productivity as a result of enabling and empowering employees to access their funds as soon as they've earned them. And then, of course, the end game is reductions in turnover. And we are seeing that employees who utilize the benefit on average in the restaurant space specifically have 22 days longer tenure. For those employees that have been utilizing the app for 6 months or more, the increase in retention is significantly higher. So it's 49% higher. So a lot of reasons to believe that these programs are really good for both employees and employers. Why haven't certain operators gone forward with an earned wage access program. If all of these things are true, and if it is a light lift for employers and it's no cost benefit for employers, if I didn't say that, it's free to the employer partner to launch these programs. Typically, with Rain's program, we actually monetize off of the end user. We charge what's akin to a very small ATM-like fee when they access their funds instantly, or very much like Venmo, if they can wait and ACH transfer funds into their bank account. It's actually a free service for the employee as well. So not predatory in nature in any way. It's an alternative to all of the predatory financial practices that are out there, allowing employees to leverage their own funds instead of having to resort to things like payday loans or bouncing checks or incurring late fees, as an example. If all of these things are true, why haven't employers gone forward with these programs? I believe it comes down to a couple of different things. Employers are still concerned with the lift associated with these programs. They think their HR team is strapped, understandably, their payroll teams are small. They have other implementations and projects that are slated for this year, and we don't have time or energy to add one more big integration implementation onto the plate of their already hardworking and streamlined teams. So that's the primary reason that we hear that employers don't go forward with these programs. And the second one is really around the ongoing administration of these programs. I want to talk a little bit about what you can expect if you were to utilize Rain's program in partnership with OneDataSource. Our model actually is the lightest weight implementation and ongoing administrative model in the marketplace. I mentioned earlier that earned wage access programs, it can be overwhelming evaluating earned wage access programs. There's so many players in the space. There's really three big ones, but then I feel like I blinked and all of a sudden I turned around and there were 30 more smaller players trying to get into the marketplace. They all have nuance around them. All of us are slightly different. Rain likes to think that we've really focused on the employee experience and the employer experience in terms of simplicity and control. Just to quickly tick through Rain's model, what we do is we integrate, for lack of a better term. I don't like to use that word because it sounds so scary. We're getting basic data elements from your HCM and time and attendance platforms to simply show employees, Joe Smith, you worked 8.1 hours. Joe Smith, you make $20 an hour. Joe Smith, you have approximately $160 in earned wages available so far that you've accrued during this current pay period. And Joe Smith, your employer's awesome. So they're allowing you to access up to 50% of those wages in advance, should you want to access them. If Joe decides to access his funds and either instantly transfer them into his account and pay a small ATM-like fee, or free transfer those funds directly via ACH into his account, Rain is actually funding that advance. So there's no change in the cash flow for our employer partners. We're pushing our money into the employee's bank account. Then on the scheduled processing day, we're providing to you as our employer partner a seamless process for that payroll adjustment to show up on the employee's paycheck and for Rain to get repaid through a payroll settlement that happens during the scheduled processing. Your responsibility as the employer is really limited to just enabling us to access the data and then helping us get repaid on the scheduled payday through a largely automated process that happens through whatever payroll software you utilize. Rain is already partnered with most of the large common payroll softwares and with a lot of the middle market payroll softwares that are common in the restaurant space. So that part is relatively seamless. Just in summary, because I want to get to the sizzle of all of this, which is talking with Bruce about how powerful the OneDataSource component is in making these programs so easy for employers. Rain's program is super reliable. We don't take over your payroll. There are some misconceptions in the marketplace because there are so many players. And I mentioned there's so much nuance associated with these programs. Rain doesn't take over your payroll. So you as the employer would maintain total control over your payroll. Rain doesn't require employees to jump through any hoops. We are completely bank agnostic. So if you've heard from these programs that employees are going to have to apply for a certain payroll, they're going to have to update their direct deposit, they're going to have to change their profile in Paycor or Paycom or Workday or whatever your system is, and that you as the employer are going to have to facilitate all of that administrative burden associated with maintaining all of those records. None of that applies. If you have heard that these programs are transferring a massive amount of data on employees and you're nervous about what that means for your employees and protecting their data, things like social security numbers and banking information and historical earnings records and all of that, none of that applies with Rain's program. We collect the least amount of data of any vendor in the United States and by a very significant margin. So your responsibility is really to provide us access to just the employee's first and last name and their wage rate and their employee ID so we can verify that they are who they say they are, and a piece of contact information so the employee can engage in two-factor authentication and receive a code to a secure cell phone or an email address. That's it. We also need their timekeeping data so that we can see when they punched in and out and use that to calculate their earned wages. So those are some highlights of the Rain program. I want to turn it over to Bruce, and I want to get into why the OneDataSource Rain combo is so powerful, because Bruce's team is really the one that does all of the heavy lifting in the background on behalf of our clients so that they don't have to worry about all of that data transfer and all of the administrative burden that's typically associated with other earned wage access programs in the United States. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Jen. That's a lot of compelling information. Before I talk about us a little bit more, I'll mention a couple of things about Rain, because we work across so many brands, systems. We do see what's going on with some of Rain's competitors. I can tell you firsthand, companies that have Rain implemented in their organization, the employees use it at a significantly higher frequency than where a competitor is implemented. I think that speaks to the ease of use, how well they roll out the program and support it. We see very little on the support side as far as needs go with Rain as well. So a really compelling case that Jen's made. To share the benefits of our solutions in relation to managing your data efficiently with OneVIEW, you can see the slide here is a representation of all of our solutions for multi-unit franchisees. And for this partnership, it's really OneVIEW that's crucial in moving the data Rain needs to its appropriate place. As you can see in the slide, we're polling point of sale, back office, banks, payroll services we integrate with, loss prevention data we use and provide tools for, voice of the customer. But the wages on demand is really table stakes now. That's why it has its own bullet in this diagram. It really is a competitive tool you just have to have in this day and time for all the reasons Jen just mentioned. Really, OneVIEW is also the center deploying a comprehensive data strategy for your business. You can see all of the variables that we work through to automate processes, improve your workflows, data security. Yeah, nobody's emailing data around. It's all pulled, stored, and managed using proper security protocols. Some of the benefits, just to name a few, that people really see when using OneVIEW, and specific to the home office, about a 60% savings in reconciling store sales. With the ability to have centralized data and streamlined workflows, you're able to save a significant amount of time on traditionally horribly time-consuming exercises, bank rec for sure. Automated credit card reconciliation, where we pull credit card batch data, reconcile that between the processor and the POS. Saves a lot of time finding where you have discrepancies. And we do the same for your deposits, pulling data in from your depository banks, matching that up to what the store said they deposited, really lets you get ahead of review on that and making sure that if any money's different or there are discrepancies, that they can be addressed really quickly. And of course, all the reporting, business intelligence, loss prevention dashboards, et cetera. We provide a real comprehensive data strategy and insights. You can make great decisions. And this slide shows all of the different brands that we are supporting, over 70 on this page. Certainly not going to go through these, but they'll be available for you to see. In addition to the benefits we just mentioned, we've really got a lot of third-party integrations. So if you look at the point of sale and back of house systems, This covers the majority of the QSR world, then third-party systems with companies like Rain, and then banks, ERP systems, et cetera. This gives you a really good view into some of the systems that were integrated to really help you streamline. With that context in mind, the value of our native integration with Rain, it really brings a reduced implementation time. We've seen Rain implementations completed, I think, 2 weeks. It's certainly less than a month or months. You'll run your program using accurate timekeeping data versus running that through Payroll. So it's more timely, more accurate. With the integration already built out, we really don't need much time to get everything up and running. Very basic information to do that for you. That's all Jen and I had today, and happy to take some time now for any kind of questions. If anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to answer those questions now.
I'll jump in while we're waiting for questions. Thank you for saying that the implementation is so quick and easy with OneDataSource. Just to hit that a little bit harder, yes, the implementation, when a vendor is putting on you as the employer to have to pull all of the data, provide it to them in the format that they need it. Things that I mentioned earlier were things like historical earnings records, benefits deduction information, garnishment information, and then on top of it, all of the employee data, the census data, and then the timekeeping piece on top of that. You can imagine that can be overwhelming. So just wanted to reiterate that on the HRIS side, Rain is only collecting a very limited data set. And that's why it's very easy and quick for us to get up and running. In many cases, that's an automated process already with your HCM vendor. Then when you add the OneDataSource component to it with them being responsible for the timekeeping, I don't want to speak for you, Bruce. I know it's not a flip of a switch. That's probably insulting, but it feels like a flip of a switch whenever we work with you to get one of our mutual clients up and running because it's so reliable and so quick on the timekeeping side. I just wanted to reiterate that's why our uptimes are so much quicker than what you're seeing from other vendors in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done so many point of sale and back office integrations that if you are an existing customer, it's just a matter of taking the data we're already pulling and doing that output to Rain. We have all those systems built, so it's really easy to apply. It's not a lot of data that we need to get all of this started. So pretty straight through process. Jen, question, if you could talk about regulations around earned wage access, states like California, the Northeast, where there are stringent payroll requirements, how does that affect earned wage access?
Understandably, employers are nervous about these programs because they do a quick Google search or they meet with a vendor and they hear about compliance. We're actually thrilled at Rain that the regulatory bodies are getting involved in earned wage access. Recently, Nevada came out with some regulations around earned wage access. Missouri came out with regulations. Rain was one of the first to apply for and receive a license in the state of Missouri. There are now 2 states where you have to be a licensed earned wage access provider. There are also some regulations at the federal level, nothing that's a law currently, but some guidelines that have been put out by different organizations. Then there is the state-by-state nuance of payroll law, some of which relate to earned wage access, some of which don't. But our compliance team is thoroughly versed in everything that I just listed. So it's important to make sure you're working with an earned wage access provider that has all of the answers to your questions and is transparent about all of the regulations and their stance on those regulations. I see we have some questions in the chat. Bruce, do you mind if I start ticking through a couple of these real quick?
Yeah, jump right in.
What's the average percentage of earned wages that employers offer? Typically, most employers offer 50% of gross wages. That's enough that employees can utilize this as an emergency use benefit, but not so much that they're going to end up with a zero paycheck. I know there are a lot of vendors out there that offer up to 100% of net pay in advance to employees. Philosophical question or discussion on how you want to deploy your program. At Rain, we like the idea that employees will never receive a zero paycheck. if you offer 50% of gross wages. But that is a customizable feature, at least with the Rain program. Does Rain have many customers that have moved from another EWA provider? The answer is yes. And this is relatively recent. I think that up until maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was very uncommon to see employers moving from one earned wage access provider to another. Some of the early programs in the space were pretty cumbersome to get up and running. A lot of employers thought, even though I maybe don't love the vendor I'm working with, we went through a lot to get to this point, we're just going to stick with it and bear it out. But now, and maybe it's specifically Rain because it is very easy to transition onto our platform. Now, probably the biggest source of our clients are those that are actually transitioning from another provider onto the Rain platform. So we're super excited about that. We've got really great experience in transitioning employees from two predominant other platforms to our platform, and they don't even see an interruption in service. We have it down to a science where you can shut off your other earned wage access provider's platform and go live with our platform the very next day so that employees don't see a disruption in the benefits. We, of course, can provide lots of references that have gone through that process and can tell you what it's like to be on the other side with the Rain program. How does support work with the data? Do we contact Rain or OneData since they're polling? Rain and OneData work together. Thank you for asking that question because this is something that we have heard is compelling about our offering. Employers who are on other earned wage access platforms have reported to us that part of what they did was they were the middleman. Anytime something broke or anytime an employee couldn't see their wages in their app, they were having to go to the timekeeping provider. Timekeeping provider was like, it's not on our side. You got to go to the vendor. Then they're having to go to the vendor and say, hey, the timekeeping provider said it's you. They were spending a lot of time troubleshooting. We take all of that out of your life. OneDataSource and Rain work directly together. Our escalations back to you as the employer are less than 1 out of every 1,000 user care questions that we get ever has to be escalated back to the employer, even for clarification. So that's something that we're super proud of. Then the last question here is, how are you measuring the productivity increase once Rain is implemented on our locations? Good question. So I already mentioned we don't collect a lot of information from you as the employer. So the insights that we can provide back to you as the employer are limited by the data that we have access to. Most of the increases in productivity that are reported are either from surveys that we were allowed to conduct with employee users with the permission of our employer partners, or it's information that was provided to us directly from our employer partners who have taken the time to look at their own data and evaluate whether these earned wage access programs seem to be benefiting their organization. We do have access, of course, to the timekeeping data, so we can see things like increases in hours worked or shifts picked up over the course of a certain time period. We believe that speaks to increased productivity for our employee users and therefore our employer partners. Thanks so much for the question.
About the support and everything and the polling. We're polling the stores. That's our responsibility as part of this relationship. The way we've engineered polling over time and then our interaction with Rain is if the store is down, internet's down at the store, there's some polling issue, our support team is working through that every day to make sure that we get data as timely as possible. And we're sending multiple updates to Rain. So if an early morning update of data to Rain, a store hasn't polled some issue, we will get it on a later attempt and send it to Rain in a later file feed to make sure that access is always as up to date as possible for your employees. Question on the comments earlier about HCM and payroll companies, seeing that every one of them now has an earned wage access program. Why shouldn't we just work with the current payroll platform to offer this benefit instead of Rain? How do we know who we're actually working with?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It does seem as though every HCM platform now has at least a perspective on earned wage access and how they're going to go forward. They know that it's tremendously valuable for their employers and for their employee users on their platform. Some HCM platforms have chosen to employ a marketplace program where they allow earned wage access vendors to apply for their marketplace. And then they certify those partners as legitimate integrated partners. And you can go into their marketplace and you can select any one of those vendors and know that they're going to work well with your HCM platform. Others have chosen to actually white label a provider like a Rain and put their own label on it and present it as their own solution. So it further makes the landscape really complex for an employer that's trying to evaluate these earned wage access providers. Not only are there nuances in all of these different programs that you got to figure out, then you also have to figure out who's really providing what with which provider. What I would suggest is, first of all, there is no HCM platform that is an expert in the earned wage access space. That's why most of them have chosen to white label a provider like a Rain, because this is all we do. All we do is earned wage access. We're well-funded, capitalized. Our data integrations have stood the test of time in terms of being able to reliably transmit the data that we need to transmit to power these programs, which is a new phenomena. There is no HCM platform, even those that have released their own pay-on-demand features. Many of them are not very robust and they have a lot of bugs associated with them. I would just make sure that you do your due diligence, that you check references, that you go on Twitter and Reddit if you're thinking about using a certain earned wage access provider or you're thinking about using your HCM platform's earned wage access program. Check it out thoroughly. Also understand who's powering the program. We hear quite a bit, oh, hey, I'm just going to use XYZ company because they already have an earned wage access feature. And employers are surprised to find out, no, their earned wage access feature is actually being powered by ABC company. So what's happening is you're sending your data from your HCM platform to a third-party vendor anyway. So why wouldn't you just cut out the middleman and go directly to the vendor instead of having your payroll software be sending that data for you? So there's a lot to understand about those programs. And the last thing I would say is, as you're evaluating vendors, and specifically with your own HCM platform, know what the employee experience is. Because at the heart of all of this is you want a great program for your employees. You don't want employees to have to jump through a bunch of hoops, like applying for a certain pay card to be able to use the program, or having a complicated pricing structure where it's free if I apply for this pay card, but I have to make that pay card now my direct deposit information. But it's a charge if I apply for the pay card and don't make it my direct deposit information, it's a reduced charge. And if I don't do any of those things and I want it to go directly to my own bank account, it's a different charge and they don't have a free option. The employee experience is a key component to this. And oftentimes it's much easier and simpler to work directly with a vendor that does nothing but this and can certainly plug into your existing systems. Speaking of price, I see there's a question in the chat. What's the average fee to the employee? Rain's price is $3.99 is our ATM-like fee. If employees need instant access to their funds, we're bank agnostic. So we push to any 16-digit pay card, debit card, bank accounts, etc. So employees can instantly use it. Takes 3 minutes or less to attach their banking information and push funds, and it costs $3.99. We also offer a free transfer via ACH to employees' bank accounts, and that is a 100% free service. We were the first one to bring that to the marketplace when we launched 4.5 years ago here in the United States. So very simple, straightforward pricing. I also will say Rain reserves the right to bid pricing for large organizations. So if you're a QSR brand that has 5,000 employees, and Rain reserves the right to bid on that pricing to make it slightly more economical for your employees. Certainly with our OneDataSource relationship, we offer preferential pricing to OneDataSource's clients.
Jen, earlier you mentioned perceptions of earned wage access just out there in the QSR world. People have asked me, isn't that really something only for the minimum wage earners? I think the answer is no. Can you talk about who actually uses earned wage access within the organizations and where you see that?
Yeah, the answer is a resounding no. It's amazing to me. I'm still shocked, honestly, at the high percentage of salaried employees that utilize this benefit. I think that it is becoming an expectation with the younger generations. That's my hypothesis, is that everything is on demand these days. This is less now of we need to provide support to our low paid hourly workers and more of, hey, we need to provide an innovative payment mechanism for this generation. Everything is on demand. Why is my payroll the one thing that has not evolved beyond being instant? Why am I still stuck on this 2-week pay cycle? So it's becoming an expectation, and salaried workers included in that. It's not even just the younger generations. Our system flagged recently a transaction that someone took that was thousands of dollars someone advanced themselves, and it turned out to be an executive at one of our clients. It flagged in our system as potential fraud, and it wasn't. It was an executive, for whatever reason, likes the convenience of being able to access money on his schedule instead of on his company's pay schedule. Or maybe he was testing our system. I'm not sure, but but it's wildly popular with salaried employees alike.
Thanks, Jen. I think we've covered a great amount of territory, and we're at the end of the time that we committed that we'd stay within. Really appreciate everyone taking time to join us today. Jen, great hearing from you as always, and a lot of great information there. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so fun. Thanks, Bruce. Looking forward to having a lot more mutual clients together. Thanks for the invite today.